"Shut up, human, we're freezing. Get in my bed now." Exiled alien woman's desperate order. The cold hit them first. It was not the kind of cold that made you shiver for a moment and then forget it. This was a deep, biting cold that clawed at the skin, seeping into bones, refusing to let go. Captain Arya Quinn struggled to keep her balance as she stumbled across the frozen plains, her crew close behind, their breaths visible as clouds of desperate warmth in the freezing air. The sky was dark, a heavy gray that blended almost seamlessly into the icy ground. Snowflakes swirled in gusts of wind, cutting their faces like tiny knives. The human expedition ship, the Horizon's Edge, had crashed hours ago, though it felt like days. The ship's systems had failed spectacularly after encountering an unexpected electromagnetic storm in orbit around this uncharted planet. The hull had cracked, alarms had screamed, and then nothing. Silence, snow, and the sharp sting of freezing air. Their communications were dead, their heat generators destroyed, and the emergency packs could only hold so much warmth. Arya glanced at her crew. There were 4 others besides her, each bundled in layers of thermal gear. They had survived the initial crash, but survival now was uncertain. Each step through the snow was an effort. Each breath was a reminder that the planet did not care whether they lived or died. "I don't see anything," said Jalen, the ship's engineer, his voice muffled through his frost-crusted scarf. "No shelter, no heat, nothing. We're walking into the middle of nowhere. If we stop now, the cold will get us." Then something unusual caught Arya's eye, a shadow or maybe a darker patch of ice. It was faint, but it did not seem natural. She motioned for the others to follow her. Carefully they approached, each crunch of snow beneath their boots sounding loud in the desolate silence. It was a cave, or at least an opening in the ice that could offer some protection from the wind. Arya signaled for the others to move inside. They huddled together, shaking, bodies pressed close in search of any shared warmth. Inside, the cave was narrow at first, then widened into a larger chamber. The walls glimmered faintly with frost crystals, reflecting what little light there was. It was cold, but better than the open plains. Jalen collapsed onto the icy floor, groaning. "This is better, not warm, but better." It was sharp, commanding, yet strained by the cold. "Who are you, and why are you here?" Her skin shimmered faintly blue under the icy light. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, glowing with an inner light that made them seem almost ethereal. Her hair floated as if underwater, white streaks moving against her dark robes. She was slender but radiated strength, a presence that made the humans feel small and fragile. "I am Lashara," she said. Her voice was sharp, almost impatient. "And I do not care about your intentions. You have trespassed. This place is not for the likes of you." "Humans," she muttered, more to herself than to them. "So fragile, yet so persistent, always thinking you can survive where others cannot. That we can work with her. If you want to survive, you do as I say, now." The air was warmer here, almost comfortably so, and at the center was a large, raised platform covered in thick, alien fabrics. The warmth radiated from the bed, not from fire, but from something intrinsic to Lashara herself. Arya hesitated at the edge of the platform. Lashara's eyes bored into hers. "Do you want to die? Or do you want to live?" The cold, relentless moments before had made them numb and weary. Now heat seeped into their frozen limbs, bringing back life to fingers and toes that felt frozen solid. Lashara watched them silently, her expression unreadable. "Do not move too much," she said finally, "or you will disrupt the balance." "The balance of survival," Lashara replied. "Here warmth is life, and life is fragile. You humans do not understand. You cannot survive like we do, but perhaps you can learn." And yet she sensed that there was more to this alien than met the eye. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside the cave the humans regained their strength. Lashara shared no words, only warmth and silent observation. Occasionally she would flick her eyes toward Arya as if measuring her worth, testing her resilience, her courage. Finally, Lashara spoke again. Humans are interesting. You adapt, you survive, you find ways when none exist. Fragile bodies, fragile minds, yet you endure. You are not like the others of your kind. You must prove you are capable, or you will die. As the storm continued outside, the humans began to understand the strange dynamic of their situation. Lashara was not just a guide or a savior. She was a force of nature in her own right, unpredictable and demanding. Yet she also offered something no one else could, life in a place where death seemed certain. Arya lay back slightly on the bed, the warmth easing the ache in her muscles. She looked at Lashara and saw something unexpected in the alien's eyes, a hint of hope, perhaps, or maybe curiosity. A life spent in exile, isolated and judged, now intersected with humanity in the most unlikely of ways. This was not the first time humans had encountered alien life, but it was the first time they faced an alien whose survival depended on her own rules, her own understanding of the universe, and whose respect had to be earned, not assumed. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, warmth and silence held the humans together. They were alive, for now. And for Arya, that was enough. The cold had not yet left them, even inside Lashara's warm chamber. It was a strange heat, not like a fire or a heater. It radiated from her own body, a subtle pulse that made the humans feel their frostbitten limbs slowly regain feeling. They huddled close, still wary, still uncertain of this alien's intentions, but desperate to survive. Arya Quinn, as always, was the first to gather her wits. "Thank you for letting us stay here," she said cautiously, glancing at Lashara. The alien's eyes flickered, but she made no response. "Do not thank me," Lashara replied sharply. Her voice was still commanding, like a whip cutting through the silence. "Words mean nothing here. Actions matter. You wish to survive. Then listen, learn, and obey. Everything else is irrelevant." She could see that this was not just a shelter. Lashara was testing them, measuring their strength, their determination, their adaptability. Humans were unpredictable, fragile, but their minds could bend where others could not. That was something Lashara did not yet fully understand. The crew huddled together and she looked at them. Jalen was rubbing his hands together, still shivering. Mara, the biologist, was staring at the strange crystals along the walls, fascinated and fearful at the same time. Tav, the navigator, was muttering about how they might be able to repair the ship if they could just survive a few more days. And then there was Ben, the youngest, trembling but trying to mask his fear behind forced confidence. Lashara observed them silently, pacing around the chamber. "You are weak. Weak minds, weak bodies. This environment will kill you unless you adapt. That is the truth you must accept. Survival is not a choice. It is a requirement." If they did not learn how to survive here, they would not live long enough to repair their ship or contact anyone. "Then teach us," she said firmly. "We want to survive. We will do what you say." There was no room for hesitation. The first lesson began immediately. Lashara moved to a section of the cave and produced strange devices from hidden compartments in the ice walls. They were small, crystalline structures that hummed faintly, glowing with a soft blue light. She handed one to Arya. "This will help regulate your body temperature. Place it on your skin where the cold is most severe. Learn its use, or you will lose fingers and toes before nightfall." She passed the crystal to Jalen, who immediately let out a gasp of relief as warmth returned to his frostbitten fingers. Mara's curiosity got the better of her. "How does it work?" she asked, even though she already suspected the answer. Lashara did not answer immediately. Instead, she motioned for Mara to follow her. They went to a section of the cave where the walls were smoother, almost polished. Lashara pressed a hand against the ice, and energy seemed to flow from her fingertips into the wall. The ice responded, glowing faintly. Energy can be transferred. Heat can be directed. Life is balance. Humans waste it. You will learn to focus your energy, to survive where others fail. Lashara taught them how to scavenge for hidden food sources beneath the ice, how to recognize shelter in dangerous terrain, and how to construct simple tools from the environment. Humans, who often relied on machines and technology, were forced to adapt in new ways. Arya noticed a spark in her crew. Despite exhaustion, fear, and pain, they were learning, changing. Lashara also introduced them to something more subtle, a rhythm of survival that went beyond tools and technology. She taught them to sense the wind, the ice, the faint vibrations of life under the frozen surface. She demonstrated how to conserve energy, how to sleep without freezing, and how to ration warmth between each other in extreme conditions. At first, the humans struggled. Their bodies were unaccustomed to such discipline, and their minds rebelled against the alien methods. They whispered to each other at night, questioning whether they could really survive. But slowly, something remarkable happened. They began to adapt. Jalen discovered that he could make small devices using scavenged ship parts and the ice crystals Lashara provided, amplifying the warmth in certain areas. Mara began noticing subtle cues in the cave that indicated safe passages and hidden food. Tav used her navigation skills to map the cave system, identifying potential shelters in case of stronger storms. Ben, the youngest and most hesitant, found a rhythm with the others, his fear transforming into determination as he observed Arya and the rest of the crew working together. Lashara watched silently, often from a distance. Her eyes betrayed a mixture of surprise and respect. Humans, she realized, were more resilient than she had expected. Their fragility was obvious, but their ability to adapt, to think, and innovate under pressure was extraordinary. "You are improving," she admitted one evening as the wind howled outside the cave. "Not as fast as you should, but enough to survive longer than most. You are learning to work with the environment, not against it. That is the first step towards survival. We wouldn't have lasted even an hour without your guidance." The humans gathered near the alien bed, still warm from Lashara's presence. They shared body heat as the alien instructed, learning to sleep in shifts, conserving warmth and energy. Sleep was fitful at first, nightmares of frozen plains haunting them, but gradually their bodies adjusted. Arya stayed awake for a while, watching Lashara move silently through the chamber. The alien's movements were precise, deliberate, almost ritualistic. There was an elegance in the way she handled the crystals, a grace in her every step. And yet beneath that elegance, Arya sensed something darker, a history of isolation, exile, and survival against impossible odds. "You have been alone a long time," Arya said softly, breaking the silence. Lashara paused, not turning to her. "Longer than you can imagine. Exile is not just being sent away, it is being erased, forgotten, left to survive where others will not. I have endured what you cannot even conceive. It is proven. You may have potential, humans, but potential alone is meaningless. You must prove yourselves, adapt or perish." They learned to make shelters from ice and stone, how to store food safely, and how to track subtle signs of life in the frozen expanse. They discovered hidden sources of water beneath the ice, melting it carefully without losing too much heat. They learned to move silently in the storm, conserving energy while avoiding deadly ice fissures. Arya found herself growing in ways she had never imagined. Leadership became less about giving orders and more about understanding the needs, fears, and strengths of each crew member. She learned patience, observation, and innovation. Lashara, for all her harshness, became an unlikely teacher, revealing lessons humans could not have learned alone. One morning, after a particularly harsh night, Lashara finally spoke to the crew together. "You have survived longer than most would expect. You are beginning to understand the world here, though incompletely. This is progress, but not victory. The planet is unforgiving, and what awaits outside this cave is far more dangerous than the storm you escaped." They were stronger now, more confident. Their shivering had reduced, their movements steadier. Even Ben, once the most fearful, now looked like a young soldier ready to endure anything. "What awaits us?" Jalen asked. Lashara's eyes darkened. "Enemies, those who hunt exiles, those who will kill without mercy. You are small, fragile, and human, and yet You may survive where others fail. That is why I am here. That is why I allowed you into my shelter. Your survival is intertwined with mine, whether you understand it or not. It was about fighting against impossible odds and doing so together. As the day wore on, the humans prepared for what Lashara had warned them about. They strengthened the cave entrance, reinforced shelters, and tested the devices Lashara had provided. They practiced coordinated movements, learning to move in the freezing wind while remaining alert to threats. At night, as they huddled for warmth, Arya reflected on the past few days. They had entered the cave as frightened, exhausted humans, dependent entirely on chance and the mercy of a stranger. Now, they were beginning to understand the alien world around them. They were learning, adapting, surviving. And Lashara, the exiled alien woman who had commanded them with an almost impossible authority, was beginning to see something extraordinary. That humans, despite their fragility, could rise to challenges others could not. That they could endure, innovate, and even inspire respect in a being who had lived a lifetime beyond their comprehension. The storm outside continued, but inside the cave, a fragile bond had formed. Humans and alien, teacher and student, survivor and apprentice. They were not safe yet, but they were alive. And in this frozen, hostile world, survival was everything. Arya closed her eyes, feeling the warmth and the strange sense of hope that had begun to grow inside her. The next challenge was coming, and when it arrived, they would be ready, or they would die trying. For now, survival was enough, and that was the beginning of something greater. The frozen winds howled outside, carrying with them a low, almost metallic hum that made the humans pause mid-step. Arya Quinn looked out through a small crack in the icy wall of Lashara's cave. The storm had subsided slightly, but the air was not empty. There was something else, something unnatural moving across the snow. Lashara approached silently, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You sense it, do you not?" she said, her voice calm but edged with warning. "They are coming." "What is coming?" "Can we fight them?" she asked cautiously. Lashara's eyes met hers. "Perhaps, but not with brute strength alone. You are human, you are fragile, the Vorik expect weakness. That is why you may survive." But the way Lashara spoke, as if it were not impossible but necessary, sparked a flicker of hope. Humans had survived impossible situations before, relying on their ingenuity, their courage, and their unpredictable nature. Lashara began their preparation immediately. She directed the humans to gather ice shards, rocks, and whatever debris they could find in the cave. She taught them to construct traps that were simple in concept but deadly in execution. The Vorik were not accustomed to clever tactics. They relied on strength, technology, and intimidation. Humans, she knew, could turn that reliance against them. Arya worked alongside Jalen and Mara to reinforce the cave entrance. They used ice shards to create spikes and hidden pitfalls, placing sensors that Lashara provided to detect movement in the freezing air. Ben and Tav worked on smaller devices, tools that could confuse and slow down the Vorik's approach. Every piece of technology they scavenged from the wrecked ship was repurposed, upgraded with Lashara's alien enhancements. Hours passed like days. The storm had cleared, but tension filled the cave more than ever. Every shadow, every sound outside made them jump. They were preparing for a battle unlike any they had fought before. Finally, Lashara spoke, her voice calm but commanding. "They are close. I can feel it in the vibrations of the ice. You will fight not with strength but with strategy. You will survive by being unpredictable, by thinking where they do not." They were unlike anything the humans had seen, tall, armored figures with elongated limbs and reflective, faceted eyes that scanned the environment continuously. Their movements were precise, methodical, and terrifying in their efficiency. Lashara moved among the humans, her presence commanding. "Do not panic. Trust in your training. Trust in each other." Vorik scouts approached the cave, their boots crunching across the snow with unnatural silence. Lashara gestured, and the humans sprang into action. Ice traps concealed beneath the snow snagged the Vorik, slowing their advance. Crystals Lashara had taught them to place emitted a faint pulse, disorienting the alien sensors. Jalen had rigged a device that amplified the warmth of the crystals, creating a subtle thermal distortion that confused the Vorik's heat-based vision. Mara had positioned herself near the edge of the cave, using Lashara's lessons to predict where the aliens would step. Each human moved with purpose, using their ingenuity and understanding of the environment to their advantage. The Vorik were strong and fast, but they were not prepared for clever, adaptive resistance. Each trap slowed them, each unexpected maneuver disrupted their rhythm. Arya realized something that Lashara seemed to have understood all along. Humans thrived where others relied solely on power. Their unpredictability was their greatest weapon. One Vorik broke through the traps and advanced toward the cave entrance. Arya met it head-on, using a combination of makeshift weapons and quick thinking. She dodged its strikes, using the alien's momentum against it, and pushed it into a hidden pit she had helped construct earlier. The alien crashed down, stunned, giving the others time to regroup. Lashara watched silently, her expression unreadable but her eyes glimmered with approval. Good, that is the way of humans. You think beyond the obvious, you survive. They coordinated attacks, using distractions, misdirection, and terrain to their advantage. Even Ben, the youngest, found his place. He rigged small, explosive devices using scavenged materials, targeting Vorik sensors and creating confusion. He moved cautiously but with precision, proving that even the smallest human could make a difference. Tav guided movements from the rear, signaling when to strike and when to retreat. Mara's keen eyes spotted hidden threats before they could reach the cave. Jalen maintained the devices, repairing them and adjusting as needed. And Arya coordinated everything, making split-second decisions, balancing risk and reward, leading the humans with a mix of strategy and intuition that Lashara quietly admired. Lashara herself joined the battle only when necessary, her alien abilities unmatched, but deliberately restrained. She allowed the humans to take the lead, testing their resilience and teaching them the value of resourcefulness. Her presence was enough to inspire confidence, but she did not overshadow them. Humans needed to prove themselves, and she would not take that away from them. Hours passed, and finally, the Vorik began to retreat. They had underestimated the humans' cleverness and adaptability. Injured and confused, they disappeared into the night, leaving the ice plains silent once more. The humans collapsed, exhausted but alive. Their bodies were battered, their muscles aching, but their spirits were higher than ever. They had survived a battle that should have been impossible. They had done it not through brute force, but through ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. Lashara surveyed them. You have survived today because you adapted. You thought where others would not. You improvised when there was no instruction. That is why humans are dangerous and why you may survive where others perish. Lashara's eyes softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. Do not mistake guidance for protection. I provided knowledge. You provided action. That is what matters. Humans can be fragile, yes, but you are persistent. You are clever. And persistence can outmatch strength when the strong fail to anticipate it. We did it, she said softly, almost in disbelief. We survived. An adaptation is the first step toward victory. Their minds, their creativity, their unpredictability, these were their true weapons. As the storm raged once more outside, Arya and her crew huddled near the warmth, reflecting on the lessons learned and the challenges ahead. They had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger, smarter, and more resilient. Lashara, the exiled alien woman who had once commanded them with sharp, desperate orders, now watched them with a measure of respect. The next day would bring new dangers, new tests of skill and courage. The Vorik were still out there, waiting, planning, hunting. But for the first time, the humans felt a spark of confidence. They were no longer helpless. They were learning, adapting and proving that humanity, even in the most extreme conditions, could rise to challenges that others could not. And in that frozen, hostile world, that spark was enough to ignite hope. The frozen plains were silent at first light, but the calm was deceptive. Arya Quinn stood at the cave entrance, her eyes scanning the horizon. The Vorik had retreated yesterday, but they were not defeated. She could feel it in the vibration of the ice beneath her boots, a subtle warning only a human attuned to survival could sense. Lashara appeared beside her, moving with the fluid grace of someone who had spent a lifetime surviving in extreme conditions. "They will return," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "And next time they will come prepared. Few would even try. That is the difference between them and us." There were more of them this time, dozens, organized and disciplined. Their weapons glinted in the pale light and their movements were precise, almost mechanical. But Arya knew that their strength was predictable. Humanity's advantage lay in unpredictability, creativity, and improvisation. Lashara moved among them, offering subtle guidance. She did not fight yet, reserving her strength for when it was most needed. The humans, now more confident and capable, took their positions. Jalen manned improvised energy traps, using ice crystals and ship parts to confuse the Vorik sensors. Mara positioned herself near the edge, scanning for hidden movement and tracking weaknesses in the attacker's formation. Ben, the youngest, had a row of small explosive devices, designed to create chaos and slow the enemy advance. Tav coordinated signals and movements, directing humans to shift positions and take advantage of terrain. The first wave of Vorik charged forward. The humans reacted immediately. Traps hidden in the snow snagged the advancing aliens, throwing them off balance. Energy pulses emitted from the ice crystals caused disorientation, and the humans used this moment to strike. Arya led a counterattack, moving swiftly, dodging blows and pushing enemies into hidden pits or traps. Each movement was precise, honed by days of practice and training under Lashara's watchful eyes. Despite the chaos, humans maintained cohesion. They fought not with raw strength but with strategy, anticipating the Vorik's moves and exploiting every weakness. Lashara's instructions had taught them to read the environment, to sense subtle shifts in ice and snow, and to use the terrain to their advantage. The frozen plains became an extension of their will, each trap and maneuver carefully planned. One Vorik broke through the initial defenses and advanced toward the cave entrance. Arya met it head-on, using a combination of makeshift weapons and quick reflexes. She dodged its strikes, using its momentum against it, and drove it back into a concealed pit. Mara and Jalen moved in coordination, delivering precise attacks that disabled the alien. Lashara finally intervened, her movements a blur of grace and power. She struck with precision, targeting the Vorik in ways humans could not, but only where necessary. She allowed the humans to lead the fight, stepping in only when an outcome hung in the balance. Her presence inspired confidence, yet reminded them that survival required constant vigilance. Hours passed like minutes. The Vorik, formidable as they were, began to falter. They had not expected humans to be so adaptive, so coordinated. Every trap, every diversion, every improvised strategy weakened them. Arya could see exhaustion in their movements, hesitation in their attacks. They were strong, yes, but rigid and predictable. Humanity's ingenuity, flexibility, and teamwork were overwhelming them. Ben's explosive devices created confusion at critical moments. Tav's signals allowed humans to reposition and flank enemies. Jalen and Mara's innovations with energy crystals disoriented the Vorik sensors, creating openings for Arya and others to strike effectively. It was a perfect combination of human creativity and Lashara's alien knowledge. By midday, the Vorik began to retreat. Their numbers dwindled, their formations broke. They disappeared into the icy horizon, leaving the humans victorious. The cave and its surroundings were scarred by the battle, but the humans were alive, triumphant not by strength but by intelligence and determination. Exhausted, the humans gathered in the cave. Their bodies were battered, their muscles aching, yet their spirits soared. They had faced an overwhelmingly powerful enemy and survived. They had done so not through brute force, but through strategy, adaptability, and cooperation. Lashara stood apart, her eyes observing them with a strange mixture of approval and satisfaction. "You have survived because you adapted," she said. "You thought where others would not. You improvised when no instruction existed. That is why humans endure. That is why you may survive where others perish. Humans are fragile, yes, but persistence and creativity make you strong. Remember that." Night fell and the storm returned, harsher than before. The cave walls rattled with the force of the wind and snow drifts pressed against the entrance. But inside, humans and alien were alive, strong, and more connected than ever. They had faced death and found themselves victorious. Arya looked at her crew. Jalen, Mara, Tav, and Ben were exhausted but alert, eyes reflecting determination. Each one had played a critical role in the battle. They had not relied on strength alone but had relied on intelligence, improvisation, and cooperation, the qualities that made humans extraordinary. Lashara approached, her expression unreadable. "The Vorik will return," she warned. "They are patient, cunning, and relentless. But today you have learned something important. Survival is not about power alone. It is about using your mind, your skills, and your will. That is why humans are dangerous. The galaxy is full of dangers. Strength, intelligence, and persistence will always be tested. Remember that." They were no longer mere survivors. They were fighters, strategists, and problem solvers in a world designed to destroy them. As the night deepened, Arya reflected on the battle. They had faced an enemy far stronger, faster, and technologically advanced, yet they had prevailed. Not because they were stronger, but because they were human. They adapted. They improvised. They thought when others followed instinct alone. That was their advantage, and it was a power no Vorik could match. Lashara sat nearby, observing them silently. For the first time, she seemed to acknowledge something she had long denied. Humans were extraordinary. Fragile, unpredictable, and persistent, but capable of ingenuity and courage that rivaled the best of her own kind. She had tested them, challenged them, and now she respected them. Not fully, perhaps, but enough to see the potential they carried. The storm raged on outside, a reminder that the world beyond the cave remained dangerous and unforgiving. But inside, humans and alien were alive, victorious, and connected by the shared experience of survival. They had faced death and emerged stronger, their minds sharpened by adversity, their courage hardened by battle. Arya lay back slightly, feeling the warmth and the strange sense of hope that had begun to grow inside her. The next challenge was coming. The Vorik would not give up, and the humans would face even greater threats. But now they were ready, or at least they had learned that readiness was a state of mind, a combination of courage, strategy, and adaptability. And in this frozen, hostile world, that was enough. For now, survival was victory, and victory was a promise of greater things to come. The frozen plains were quiet at first light, but the humans and Lashara knew better. Silence on this planet was never just absence, it was waiting. Waiting for storms, waiting for predators, waiting for the Vorik to return. Arya Quinn stood at the cave entrance, scanning the horizon. The night's victory had been hard-won, but it had also been only the beginning. Lashara emerged from the shadows, her white-streaked hair moving as if caught in a gentle wind. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, met Arya's. "They will come again," she said calmly, "and this time they will not underestimate you." The humans gathered near the central chamber, reviewing their positions and strategies. Jalen checked the energy traps, ensuring the devices would function under extreme stress. Mara re-examined the ice walls, identifying weak points and escape routes. Tav coordinated signals and backup plans, while Ben prepared a series of small but powerful devices designed to confuse and disrupt the Vorik. Each human moved with confidence, a stark contrast to the frightened explorers who had stumbled into Lashara's cave days ago. Lashara approached, her expression serious. "Today, survival is not enough. Today, you prove yourselves. The Vorik will challenge your minds, your reflexes, your courage. You must show them that humans are more than fragile bodies. They are adaptable, intelligent, and relentless." The Vorik were coming. This time there were more of them, dozens of armored hunters moving with precision and deadly intent. Lashara moved among the humans, offering subtle adjustments to their formations. She had trained them well, but the true test was here, actual combat against a superior enemy. Arya felt a surge of adrenaline. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about proving humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and courage. The first Vorik approached the cave. Traps hidden in the snow snagged them immediately, throwing off their formation. Energy pulses from the crystals disoriented their sensors, giving the humans the crucial seconds needed to respond. Arya moved with calculated precision, dodging a strike and pushing the alien into a concealed pit. Mara and Jalen delivered follow-up attacks, disabling the enemy. The Vorik were strong, but they were predictable. Each human anticipated their moves, exploiting weaknesses and using the environment to their advantage. Ben's devices created confusion, forcing the Vorik to hesitate and scatter. Tav's guidance allowed the humans to flank and trap the attackers, turning their strength into a liability. Lashara struck only when necessary, targeting the Vorik's more dangerous units. Her attacks were swift, precise, and controlled. She allowed the humans to lead the battle, giving them the opportunity to demonstrate their adaptability and courage. Every successful maneuver strengthened their confidence. Every victory, small though it might seem, reinforced the idea that humans were a force to be reckoned with. Hours passed like minutes. The Vorik pressed on relentlessly, but humans adapted faster than they could anticipate. Every trap, every diversion, every improvised tactic disrupted the enemy's advance. Arya realized something vital. Humanity's strength was not in muscle or armor, but in creativity, unpredictability, and unity. The Vorik were strong, but they relied on repetition and intimidation. Humans relied on innovation and cooperation. That difference became the edge. One Vorik managed to break through the defensive line, advancing toward the cave entrance. Arya met it head-on, combining speed and strategy. She dodged, feinted, and redirected its momentum into a hidden spike pit. Mara and Jalen struck simultaneously, using energy devices to immobilize it temporarily. It fell into the trap, giving the humans the advantage. The Vorik began to falter. Their precise movements became chaotic, their coordination breaking under the humans' adaptive strategies. Lashara's eyes glimmered with approval, though her expression remained stern. "This is the strength of humans," she said quietly. "Not raw power, but intelligence, courage, and adaptability. You endure where others fail." The humans executed their strategy flawlessly. Ben's devices created a diversion, scattering the Vorik forces. Jalen's energy traps disoriented the leader's sensors. Mara positioned herself to anticipate its movements, while Tav directed the humans to exploit openings. Arya faced the leader directly, using feints and misdirection to drive it toward a hidden pit reinforced with spikes and energy crystals. The leader fell into the trap, immobilized by human ingenuity. The remaining Vorik, seeing their commander defeated, began a hasty retreat. Exhausted, injured, but alive, the humans had survived the impossible. They had faced a superior enemy and prevailed not through brute strength, but through intelligence, creativity, and teamwork, the essence of what made humans extraordinary. As silence returned to the frozen plains, the humans gathered inside the cave, their bodies shaking with exhaustion but their spirits soaring. Lashara observed them, her eyes reflecting a rare emotion, respect. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have proven that humans are capable of adapting, innovating, and fighting where others would perish. Today, you are no longer merely survivors. You are warriors of intellect and courage." Lashara's eyes softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. "I did not guide you for gratitude. I guided you because it was necessary. You acted. That is what matters. Humans are fragile, yes, but your creativity and persistence make you strong. Remember that." Despite their exhaustion, there was a sense of triumph and newfound confidence. They had faced death and emerged victorious, proving that humanity's ingenuity and courage could stand against the strongest enemies. Night fell, and the storm returned, fierce and relentless. Snow battered the cave entrance, and the ice walls groaned under the weight of wind and frost. But inside, humans and Lashara were safe, alive and stronger than ever. They had faced the impossible and prevailed. Arya lay near the warmth of Lashara's presence, reflecting on everything that had happened. They had entered this planet as fragile, inexperienced explorers, dependent entirely on chance and the mercy of a stranger. Now they were a cohesive team, capable of facing overwhelming odds and triumphing through intelligence, strategy, and courage. Lashara sat nearby, watching them. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Humans were extraordinary, fragile, unpredictable, but persistent and intelligent. She had tested them, challenged them, and now she saw what they were capable of. She had once lived in isolation, judged and exiled by her own kind. But here, in this frozen, hostile world, she had found equals, not in strength, but in adaptability, resilience, and courage. The next morning, the storm had finally passed. The plains were calm, the horizon clear. The humans began repairing the wrecked ship with Lashara's guidance, combining human engineering with alien knowledge. For the first time, they moved with confidence, knowing that survival was not just about enduring hardships, but about thriving and adapting, even in the harshest conditions. Lashara addressed them one last time before they prepared to leave. "You have proven yourselves. You have survived against impossible odds. Remember this, survival is not about strength alone. It is about intelligence, courage, and adaptation. You humans possess all three. Use them wisely. You've taught us more than survival. You've taught us how to be human in a galaxy that tests everything we are. That is the way forward." They had proven the strength of human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. And as they took their first steps onto the icy plains, they knew one thing with certainty: humanity was not fragile. Humanity was unstoppable, clever, and persistent. And in a galaxy full of dangers, that was enough to make them extraordinary.